and see everybody's here. Is Bill Monroe Jr. on the phone yet? I've not heard from him.
Oh, good evening, Cyndi. How are you?
Oh, yay, you're there. Thanks, Bill. Welcome. Jason?
Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that.
No problem. Hi, Jason. Thanks for attending. Jeff Keatley? Not heard from Jeff, so hopefully he'll show up quickly. Grant Sheely is occupied. He may try and join us later. So I will put him down as a no for now. Megan Selvig also said she was full up with meetings this afternoon, so she was not going to make it. Jack Craven. Jack Craven was a tentative, so hopefully he'll be able to come in. Dana Burwell.
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Dana. Thanks for attending. Brian Paulson is here to my, well, I guess left on the screen. And Sergeant Clint Galusha. See his smiling face.
Yes, I can hear you now. I had my speaker off in case you were trying to get me earlier.
Oh, great. Thanks, Clint. And then for new members, I'd like to introduce and have them volunteer any information they'd like to share. We have Chance Caruso from Rad Camps out of Bend. Chance bought Rad Camps a few years ago, and it's an outdoor youth-based educational program. So welcome, Chance. Do you have anything you can add to it? Let us know a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. Happy to be here. I appreciate you having me. I run Rad Camps out of Central Oregon. We access about 50 different U.S. Forest Service locations off of special use Forest Service permits. We operate mainly in the summertime, and we've got access to a big, giant range of locations, anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours out of Bend. Very backcountry spots, backcountry guiding, small groups, things like that. So happy to be here.
Thank you for attending and welcome to the GAC. We're glad to have you. Next on my list is David Sada, who actually made the trip down I-5 and joined us in person. David is owner of North American Guide Service out of West Lynn, and he's been guiding, at least with us legally, since 2018. I'm sure a lot longer than that. Hunting and fishing, and he's also a participant in the non-resident hunt tag program. Welcome, David. Let us know a little bit more about yourself.
Oregon resident. Family's been here for many generations. Our cattle brand's in the Oregon Trail Museum. We pioneered the state, so Oregon's my home. Hunt and fishing guide, like she said. I hunt all over the state, fish the North Coast, Willamette, Columbia, but do a lot of guiding and just again love Oregon and want to see her be the best I can see it be.
Thanks, David. Welcome. And then I have Nat Hughes on my list. Nat is owner of Screamin' Reels Guide Service out of Brookings. We're glad to have somebody from down south. Thanks, Nat. Guiding since 2020. I have you down as a veteran and a former law enforcement officer. Welcome, Nat. Please help us fill us in on what else you got going.
Hi, glad to be here. Like Cyndi said, I run a guide service in Southern Oregon. And then new this year, I'm going to be guiding for a lodge on Odell Lake for the summer. And I'm also the vice president of Oregon South Coast Fishermen Step Club and the vice president for Tigavet Fishing at Odell Lake. So kind of a little bit of everything and busy.
Definitely. I ran into Bernie Haney the other day and said to say hi. So you're a great operation there in Odell Lake. So thank you. And then
Thanks.
Last but not least is Will Volpert, Will Creations, DBA Indigo Creek Outfitters, Whitewater out of Phoenix in the Southern Oregon area. I have you down guiding it since 2003, Will, I think. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's awesome. And president of the Wild Rogue Outfitters Association. So welcome, Will, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Happy to be here and part of this group. Will Volpert, owner of Indigo Creek Outfitters. We're a whitewater rafting company based in Southern Oregon in the town of Phoenix. And we operate day rafting trips as well as multi-day trips on the wild and scenic section of the Rogue and the Upper Klamath, the portion that's in Oregon.
Right.
And president of the Wild Rogue Outfitters Association. So we represent members with special use permits on the wild and scenic Rogue River.
Thanks, Will. Welcome. We're thrilled to have you on the board. I also see Jeff Keatley. Did you just join us? I believe. You may be muted or not.
Yeah, I'm on. I'm having a little trouble with, I guess, an older version of the software, but I can
Okay.
hear and see you.
Oh, great. Those are important things. Thank you. All right. Well, the gang's all here as far as I can tell for the most part. First order of business is just approval of the minutes of the last meeting on August 6th, 2025. Hopefully everybody got a chance to read them. Like I mentioned in an email, new members do not have to vote on this. Existing members, if you have any objections or corrections. All right, I will go with that as accepted as submitted. Thank you very much. Renewal, I have a couple, well, just one quick slide of just the stats from the end of last year. We kind of collect our stats at the end of October, just before I flip everything into renewal status and start issuing the next year's guide registrations. So gives us a little picture of how we ended up. Last year was a little bit down, just like a 1% decrease over the previous year. And when Brian shares the slide, I think he's sharing it. You can see the distribution of the guides by the services they provide. And of course, multiple services are all counted. So one guide could be counted 5 or 10 times, depending on how many services they provide. Fishing is by far our biggest portion, followed by scenic tours and hunting. And then we go from there. Guides by residency has been staying pretty consistent. At 87% for Oregon, roughly between 3 and 5% for California, Idaho, and Washington, which are the biggest non-residents that we've had in the past. And then, of course, you can see the numbers. We ended up with 1552 for 2025, slightly down. Currently, we have issued 863 guide registrations for 2026 so far. We have about 60 in the queue to be worked on. I'm trying to catch up after a vacation, so that's a little bit higher than I'd like it to be. 579 not yet renewed from 2025, and that's typical. That does not include the 100 plus June 30th expiration guides. And currently we're only about 1% behind 2025 numbers at this time. Previously, last month, I think we were about 10%, but we've made that up. It's been, with the fee increase and all, and decrease for some, it's been interesting to, try and anticipate what we're going to see. And it just goes to show you, I don't know. I thought we would be a little bit slower, but we're right, keeping pace with last year's submissions. We have 34 new members, new guides since November 1st of 2025. I decided I'd just poll to see where they came from. And we had, out of those 34, we had 2 California guides, 4 Washington guides, and 1 Idaho guide. So contrary to rumors that we'd be flooded with out-of-state guides, so far that has not happened. We're keeping an eye on it. I know I just finished another Washington guide today. But it's just interesting to see that things are pretty much status quo currently. Some of the new guides, besides they're primarily fishing and hunting, but we had someone that was registered for sailing, another for snowshoeing, one for forest bathing, which is a new one for me. I have not heard of that before. Evidently, it's some bathtubs out in the woods. Skiing and snowboarding, and then someone that also teaches naturalist skills. So I have to do a little investigation on that one, see what exactly that means. And we're staying pretty consistent at 85% of the applications come in via online, which is great for us because that's the most efficient way to gather the applications. And then if nobody has any comments on that, I'm gonna send this over to Sergeant Clint Galusha. Clint, Clint's a familiar face for most of us. Some of you may not know Clint, but why don't you explain the switcheroo for us, Clint?
Yeah, sure. So I've been in our special investigations unit for, oh gosh, probably 7 years now, either as a detective or as the sergeant. But for the last two, I was covering as our wildlife lieutenant who oversaw the special investigations unit, as well as our wildlife policies and stuff. I was covering for a lieutenant who was covering for someone else. And so I'm officially back in my position as the SIU sergeant. And, we oversee complex wildlife investigations that have to do with commercialization or across state lines or multiple states. And also we work the contract with the Marine Board for any basically just guides and outfitters, as well as the state police in general has some Marine Board funding just to be checking licenses, registration stickers and safety equipment and things like that. But my unit specifically does wildlife and also guides and outfitters.
Thanks, Clint. We're glad to have you back. I would love for you to give us a law enforcement update on what's been going on since our last meeting.
Yeah, sure. So I'm still getting my feet back into it and getting organized here, but typically a lot of seasons start off with the new year being several false applications. I know before I had left 2 years ago, it seemed like it was peaking. There was a lot of false applications on guide registration applications where they were leaving off previous convictions or things like that. And I know Cyndi's worked really hard to highlight that section so it's very bold and in red, so people are not missing it, so there's no accidents. And so happy to say that those cases have been down. I think we've only had a couple this year, so that's really great. We have worked a few of them though. Sometimes they're more of an oversight. We do work with the Marion County DA's office on those, and there's sort of a running. It depends on kind of what the crime was that they left off the application, but essentially it could be anywhere from a violation to a criminal offense. So sometimes when you see those adjudications in the newsletter, that's why there's just sort of a discrepancy in how they get treated. So another thing that I spoke about a lot when I was the wildlife lieutenant, but just the use of technology in hunting and fishing, specifically hunting. A lot of the technology is getting cheaper. And so we've been seeing a rise in usages of thermal devices, drones, things like that. And it seems to be becoming more prevalent on the recreational side. But I would say in this last year, it's becoming more frequent. I've been getting a lot more complaints in the guide and outfitter side as well. So just so everybody knows, it's unlawful to use thermal devices to scout, locate, or hunt wildlife for the purposes of hunting with any thermal device. And so kind of as this technology has been getting cheaper, I've been getting a lot of questions about thermal usage, drone usage, and incorporating some of that equipment into their guide businesses, and a lot of legal questions. So just know that you make sure you're doing your research on that kind of stuff. We've been getting a lot of complaints on that, but specifically for hunting, it is not allowed. So that's been on the rise. I know in the last newsletter, we had written about a investigation. We did a large scale investigation in 2024. We're wrapping up a lot of those cases right now, but I want to say we had about 50 suspects, all involved in the usages of thermal or trespass, aiding with thermal or unlawful take of deer. We did have one guide wrapped up in that investigation, and it did just recently get adjudicated. The guide was involved in having, I don't know if they were paid customers, we didn't get there, but they were with two other subjects using thermals to locate deer. In all, there was 3 deer and 2 thermal imaging devices that we seized from a search warrant. And we forwarded the charges to the DA's office. The subject was just convicted and sentenced to 18 months probation, 3 years hunting license suspension, $1,000 in fines, and forfeiture of all the hunting equipment. So that was and/or seized items. So the guns, the deer, the thermal devices. So that's just an example of one that's recently come through. We had another one just get adjudicated, and this one was also in the newsletter. And I have more, Cyndi, that have been adjudicated, but I'll wait just to give you an update on your newsletter. But this one was in the spring of 2024. There was an unlicensed guide taking angler trips in the Tillamook area. It had kind of moved into a waterfowl hunt where they were baiting. And there was a second guide involved in that portion of the hunt / baiting, who was a lawful guide. But that one pled out. The first guide was convicted and sentenced to 60 months bench probation and 160 hours of community service, 180 days in jail if there's a violation of the probation in those 60 months. So a lot of incentive to follow the law. And there was no waterfowl or bird hunting during that time, and $500 in fines. The second guide involved convicted misdemeanor, 36 months probation, 40 hours of community service, and forfeiture of any of the seized items, and $100 in fines. So just to kind of give you an idea what we're getting off of some of those. And obviously we work all the way around the state, so I deal with every single county and county prosecutor. So results vary sometimes, but that's pretty typical of what we're getting off of some of these cases. Does anybody have any questions for me?
I have a question for you, Clint, that goes back to our last meeting. You actually slipped out before I got a chance to ask a question, and I don't know if it never got relayed, but I never got a message back. But you guys can all hear me, correct?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. So with these new regulations, and I don't have all my terms correct here, but what do you guys call the new license that you can get for deckhands?
The crew member designation.
Okay. So I operate in the section of Oregon that's the Snake River of the Hells Canyon National Recreation Area. And so it's border waters of Idaho and Oregon in there. And so based off our special use permit, outfitters that operate in the Hells Canyon National Recreation Area are required to have Idaho and Oregon guide licenses. So in Idaho, there are no regulations or designations as it comes to deckhands. And now that Oregon has this new registration for them, how are you guys going to see that? And how will you guys enforce that?
So Jake, are you okay if I take a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
Jason, this is Brian, for the record. So just to clarify, Idaho has an employee designation, correct?
No. Not
It
for
has
deckhands, it doesn't.
a guide or an outfitter designation.
But don't you have to register employees in Idaho?
No. Not unless they're a guide.
So is your deckhand operating?
My deckhand can be anybody that day. It's just been that loose. It can be someone like I actually have like a full-time deckhand that works for me all the time. But if he wanted a break, I could just have my son deckhand for me, or my neighbor, or anybody that saw fit.
So Jason, this seems like something that we're not specifically regulating. Your special use device permit or your special use permit is regulating. Is that correct?
Say that one more time. The speaker's just a little scratchy.
So the question you're asking is to comply with your special use permit, which requires you to be a registered guide in Oregon. You're asking if your individual deckhands have to be registered as a crew member, you know, if they're under direct supervision of the charter guide. And you're asking if to be in compliance with that special use permit, if they would have to be registered as crew members. Is that correct?
I want to know how the Oregon law enforcement are going to look at it, because that's the one that I need to answer to. Because the Forest Service isn't going to do anything. This has been the way it's been forever. And so I just need to know how the Oregon State Police is going to view this, because right now nobody is going to be, you know, registering their deckhands unless you guys tell us that you're going to start ticketing for it.
So Jason, you know, before this crew member designation, your deckhands or anybody helping you or assisting with fishing while you were guiding should have been registered as an Oregon outfitter guide individually. Now we've reduced it from whatever the full outfitter guide fee is down to the crew member fee of $50. They are going to be issued their own crew member registration card, and they can move from boat to boat, but they do have to be registered by us before they should be operating. Obviously, I'll let Clint answer, but
Yeah, that's,
you know,
that's
to me,
basically-
looking at it from our side, it's a pretty clear cut whether or not they're registered.
I was going to ask if you were fishing or just whitewater rafting. So it sounds like you are fishing through the
Yeah.
Snake River section.
Yeah, jet boat.
Yeah, so we would enforce that the same way Cindy's saying. So prior to this new rule, that they would have had to have had their own guide's license. So it's much simpler now, and does allow some flexibility, but obviously does cost. So we would be checking that just like we would check anybody else's guide's licenses, just administratively and on the river. If we're seeing you operating under a guided trip, and if they're providing, you know, some sort of direction or service, we would be checking for that.
So it's been my understanding, talking with the Oregon enforcement people, that because we're licensed in Idaho, Oregon doesn't necessarily require us to have an Oregon license. The Forest Service is requiring to have it, but Oregon isn't necessarily requiring us to have it because we're also in. So it'd be the same as an enforcement guy in buoy 10 going over and checking a Washington guide. A Washington guide's not going to follow the same rules. You see what I'm saying? It's just the fact that the special use permit calls for both licenses. So I just know for a fact that that's the way it's been. I've been doing this all my life. And the Oregon State Police, it appears to me that they don't even really care about it. Because some outfitters are run with an Oregon license and some don't.
I would have to talk to, that's usually more of a field enforcement level. So it would be the guys out there. But you know, technically speaking, you would be violating your Forest Service permit. And then if you ever did come onto the Oregon side and fish from the bank, you'd be in violation then. It's similar in buoy 10. Like when these Washington guides will come over and pick up clients
Right.
in Oregon side.
I understand that. Yeah.
So yeah, it's a substantial risk for a $50 permit. I couldn't tell you how the local troops are enforcing it to the letter, but it would be a significant risk to operate that way.
Well, I was just curious because I know this is the way it's been. And I just didn't know if there had been any discussion on that. I asked this question the last meeting and just no one ever really went anywhere with it. I never got.
Yeah, and in all fairness, Jason, Joe Dezzo, Acting Sergeant Joe Dezzo was here at the last meeting. And so Clint has stepped in
Oh, okay.
as Joe left. Yeah, so
Okay.
he
All right.
didn't personally get the question, but I should have relayed that. So
I understand.
I'm sorry. And we'll talk about it and get back.
I will I'll reach out to just the local area there though and just bring up the question, and I'll get your contact information from Cyndi, and I'll have them reach out to you directly.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions for Clint? Are we?
Yes, I have one. Dana Burwell with Mackenzie Guys. I was just wondering about the thermal imaging cameras because they're really popular. Is it legal to have one in your possession while you're out hunting and have a gun in the car?
So they can't ban the mere possession of a thermal device. So while you're in a vehicle or something like that, but as soon as that device comes out and it's hunting season, you have a gun, you have a tag. That's when we've been criminally citing individuals for the use of thermals while hunting.
Or you're going to be busy up the Mackenzie River here.
We've
There's a
been-
lot of people using them. They're popular.
And we're seeing more and more.
We've been busy for 2 years now, and I'm hoping that it's just an initial surge and everybody's starting to understand that we are arresting individuals for that. We've seized a lot of thermal devices and a lot of guns in those last 2 seasons. So I'm hoping the word gets out. It doesn't help that I've been to some sportsman shows where they're selling them, and some of the reps have different rules for different states, and they've kind of been confusing some individuals here and there with that you can use them to scout or just find wildlife, and that's not lawful here in Oregon. And then I talked to a rep or a sales representative at the Cabela's, and they were telling people that they could use them to hunt all predators, which is also not accurate. So hopefully we're going to get some of this misinformation tampered, and I think you're going to start seeing a lot of these other states following suit. I've had Idaho reach out. I've had Washington reach out and just talk about how we're catching some of these individuals and what rules we have on the books. And Minnesota, I've been contacted by a lot of states that are also going the same route that we are. So I think once that kind of follows suit, we should probably see less.
Clint, this is Dave Ceda. I have a question on that because that's what I was informed that they could hunt predators at night with it. I keep hearing that over and over and over again. I don't know anything about it. What is the rules on that? Can they hunt predators at night with them, or is that off limits as well?
Yeah, it's off limits, except there's an exception through the ODA regs. So through the ODA regulations on private property that you own, possess, or control, or are an agent of the landowner, that you can use them to curb predators, but they define predators differently than ODF and W. So their predators are like rabbits, rodents, coyotes, but doesn't include other what we would include as big game animals like cougars,
Right.
bobcat, things like that. So I always tell people it's a fine line that you own, possess, or control, or an agent of the landowner. It's very specific. So I always tell people if you want to be certain, it's not just merely that you have permission to be on someone's property, but that you are an extension of their authority to use thermal devices at night to curb their predators as defined by the ODA on their land. So it's a niche. It's a small exception, but that is the exception.
So private property. All right.
Hey, Clint. Oh, hey, Cyndi. Sorry, this is Bill. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can. Go ahead, Bill.
Okay, I didn't know if I needed to do *6. Sorry about that. Hey, Clint, I have a question that one of my fellow fishing guides came at me with because he is a hunter
I'm not hearing anything.
guide as well, does outfitting, but also doesn't use thermals for for there, but he has them and he fishes. But he fishes at night for walleye, and he wants to know if he's okay to be able to use it to run on the river to avoid things like, any type
Okay.
of other animals or obstacles.
Bill,
or
hold
anything.
on, just
I
a sec. Bill, Clint, could you hear any of that?
I didn't hear any of that.
Okay, Bill's asking about someone who actually is using thermals on the water, fishing walleye, and using them at night to see obstructions or, I don't think that he's not looking for fish with them, is he, Bill?
absolutely not. No.
No
He's
fish,
pointless
just
there,
for,
but-
Yeah, as long as it wasn't being used to scout, hunt, or locate wildlife for the purposes of hunting, the lawful use.
okay, did you hear that, Bill?
No, I didn't. We got a pretty weird
Okay.
connection when it's calling. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. Clint's volume goes up and down too. So he said as long as it's being used for not for hunting.
Good.
They're able to.
Okay.
So
I told him the
use-
same thing. I just wanted to make sure I'm giving him the right information. We can use it for, running a vessel in the middle of the night, and it will help your vision, et cetera. But if you take it on the land and you use it to hunt wildlife, that's a whole different thing. So I just wanted to make sure we're clarifying. So that's cool. I got it.
Okay, I think we got that clear, Clint. So thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. If anybody else got in something urgent, we'll go on to old business rulemaking updates. Of course, we know that we had legislation passed last year, and to follow that up, we had to have rulemaking to, kind of take care of the procedural details that are required to be able to issue our guide and crew member registrations. So we had a series of rules. The primary, by far and large, the primary rules were regarding the crew member designation. We inserted the words crew member into almost every step rule we had, just to make sure that we were treating a crew member with the same authority as we were for an outfitter guide, such as registration requirements, doing backgrounds, being able to do administrative actions against them, suspension or denial. So it was a lot of that, just small paperwork trying to do, make sure that we were following what statutes authorized us to do. We also had, make sure I get this right. We added the term crew member. We increased the fees for civil penalties. We doubled the fees. We added or increased the fee for duplicate or replacement decals or registration guide registrations. And we doubled the non-resident HUD tag program fees. Honestly, they went from 25 to 50 for renewal and 75 to 150 for an initial application. So they were not huge. And also in the non-resident HUD tag program, we removed the proof of permitting, federal permitting, and we added the requirement of 3 years of guiding in Oregon as a hunting guide, which we had been doing procedurally, but we followed it up with rules. So I sent out the rules before they were voted on. The board approved them on October 30th. They were effective November 1st, same date as we rolled out the renewals and the new registration fees. So it was a busy week or so there. We had checklists upon checklists. So does anybody have any questions as far as the rulemaking and the implementation of it? All right, I'm going to hand this over to Brian. We're just wanting to we've mentioned before in the past about impacts of guides on facilities and facilities response.
Yeah, thanks, Cindy. So bear with me, I'm just getting over some slides. So let me.
It's a GC slides.
All right, so getting back to just some old business facility impacts group discussion. So at our meeting, our last meeting, we started the discussion about the intent was to try and come up with some best management practices because we often get feedback from facility owners in regards to the impacts that guides have on facilities, whether they're there day in and day out, whether it be customer parking, whether it be the fish cleaning stations, a lot of those things. And so we had two use case scenarios that we just wanted to kind of talk about that we've seen from over the last year or two, but also just have some engagement from the group discussion on what are things that you've seen on best management practices from guides using these facilities. So the first one's the city of Gold Hill. They have a city boat ramp, which is used to access what's a popular whitewater rafting stretch on the Rogue River. The city requested an annual boat ramp permit fee for $1,000 a year, essentially an annual business license based on the number of owners, employees, and insurance of $2 million per occurrence with a $500 per day penalty fee. After input from outfitter guides from what the city had requested, the business license fee was limited to a max of $250 a year, in which that insurance requirement was reduced to $500 per occurrence. That's one scenario. Another one, and just want to kind of different in the spectrum, going to the coast, the Port of Depot Bay. For 2025, the port established a business license fee aimed specifically at outfitter guides without mortgages in Depot Bay for $500 a year. The charter boats moored at Depot Bay, their business license is $150 a year, in which recreational boaters using the port to launch their facility can get $100 a year or $10 per day launch pass. And so what we're seeing is facilities are generally seeing high use from guides, and then they're applying some type of business license fee or a yearly fee for guides to be able to run business out of those facilities. And so we just want to see what we can collectively come up with as a group on what maybe you've used as successes in using facilities and best management practices. So I would open it up to a group discussion. Or any kind of talking points that anybody's came up with since our last meeting.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit on that if I can. We saw that down here. It started with Brookings going to 300 for guides that weren't mooring their boats. And then Gold Beach picked it up and charged $500 a year for use of their port, called it a seal patrol fee. And then it went to, they kind of changed the whole thing. And basically they're not calling it a business license, but it's basically the same thing. If you want use of the port, you're going to pay $500, or they use the local sheriff to trespass you from the port. Guides are kind of getting around it by putting in, if you're familiar with Gold Beach, there's different places to put in. And so a lot of those are private, and they're not paying the fee by launching or going out of those places. And I think the city's working to kind of change that, but it wasn't met with a lot of reception from guides. And so it's been kind of it's been an interesting ordeal to get it to kind of smooth out. Pretty much Gold Beach, everyone's pretty well paying that. The one in Brookings, they're getting a lot of kickback because there's really nowhere for guides to put their boats once they launch. And so I went and worked with the port manager last year to try and open up some dock space. So we didn't get kicked out of there because the guides were pretty much just blocking the ramp and nobody could get their boat in. There was a lot of fist fights and whatever you want to call it going on. I worked pretty hard to get that for the port to open up some dock space for us, but they didn't want us parking on the boat launch itself. They wanted us to move across, and a lot of the guides didn't didn't really fall in line with it. So I don't really know how it's going to go there. But we've seen a big increase in Brookings on the Checo with the closure of California over the years. And then the discovery of someone posting a 50-pound fish. And so now you're getting everybody from up north in Idaho, everywhere else coming. So I don't, it's become a thing now. Every port is seeming to charge this fee to guides, and it varies on port to port. But, if the guides don't get in line and kind of work with the ports, I think we're gonna find that we're not gonna be able to use a lot of the different ramps at these ports.
That's really good feedback, Nat, and really good feedback on the fact that you worked with Brookings to try and find some more dock space. It's a good solution.
Tried.
Yeah.
You got to get the guides to actually fall in line and do
Right.
it. So it's kind of the other portion. But I think it would be nice if these different ports would all just kind of have one fee. It's so different going port to port. You go to Winchester Bay, it's $250. It's been $250 for a long time there. You go to like Depot Bay is $500, and Gold Beach is $500, and that gets pretty spendy if you're moving around from place to place. So I don't know if there's a way to try and deal with that or not, but it would be nice if there was a nominal fee that worked for everybody and not hit and miss on where you go.
I'm wondering if you're noticing the towns that charge the fees, if you notice that there was more confrontation or more guide congestion. I'm just trying to figure out if this is, a response to, I don't want to say, bad behavior on the part of guides. I mean, frustration certainly on not having, dock space to tie up to, or ramp space if you're launching a raft, or, somebody else in a kayak wanting to launch where there's, a good rafting trip going out at the same time. But I guess more if they're noticing the interaction between the public and guides being negative.
Well, I think there's a lot of bad sentiment out there with the public and with guides. The biggest one I hear is that we're catching all the fish, and that's the reason there's no fish in the rivers. But I think that it's just if California opens back up someday, it might solve a little bit of the issue. Because we're pretty crowded, especially down here. We're super crowded with boaters, fishermen. And I don't personally, I think it's the ports are enacted this to try and make money is where for me personally, that's what I see. I don't really think it has to do with, bad interactions between guides and non-guides. It's just, I think the ports saw they could make some money off of this and started charging it. And then
we're seeing that up north too, up in Warrington, Hammond, anywhere that you get a lot of sportsmen and guides coming together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I agree with you. It's an issue. It's an issue.
I hear Bill, I hear you chiming in a little bit in the background.
Yeah, hey Cyndi, I was just wondering if I could chat real quick. I don't disagree with it. I think the ports are definitely trying to take advantage of this. Case in point, we got a more kind of serious situation in Depot Bay, which I'm really concerned about. And that's what that was actually going to lead me into my next question with you on what if anything, Oregon State Marine Board is going to do with that specific one. I have a whole nother slew of these things, but this is becoming more and more and more frequent. Whereas you look at a case in point on the Washington shoreline, Stevenson and Skamania County has now decided to do their own specific program to raise funds for their budget shortfalls. And it's totally come into play on the Wind River and Drano. That's a whole nother mess. But this one right here, it's telltale. I don't think it's okay, and I don't know if I don't know if Oregon State Marine Board can justify, hey, you guys really shouldn't be doing this if you want to keep accepting funds from us for facilities improvements, et cetera, then you can't be doing this. That would be my hope. That's my goal. And I would like to make that known as my public opinion on all of these places, not just Gold Beach, not just Rogue, not just Chetco, but Depot Bay is a serious issue because it's not happening in places like Astoria, Ham, whatever. That's just not taking place. Garibaldi's done their own thing, but it's just not like that. This is egregious. It's significant.
Nothing like Drano, I know that.
This Drano thing is a huge detriment to those Washington guys. Now they have it for themselves. Non-residents are no longer basically invited, which puts you at a big risk of coming across to be able to fish, which you're allowed to fish in there, but you can't park, you can't launch.
So Bill, this is Ryan. Just to clarify, on the Drano, are you saying that non-residents aren't allowed to park at a facility?
Correct. They are not handing out non-resident passes no longer. It is no longer allowed because they were raising the price fee structure so much, and God bless their hearts, the locals that run the government there and want to have this go their way have noticed it, and they want certain residents to have it for themselves, and that's okay. That's their decision, but it's messy. It's messy. It's almost not quite as messy as, the Ilwaco Charter Association not allowing a Washington resident to fish below Longview Bridge. I'm not saying that, but it's starting to become a more common issue. Yes, you cannot launch your boat on the Washington shoreline, even though you're a registered fishing guide as a non-resident Washington fishing guide, which, by the way, is still an exuberant amount of money, just like Oregon was. But we fixed that, and now I bet you they'll have to come down and match. But still, I'm just saying.
Thanks, Bill, for that feedback.
No.
It's bad enough I don't even go up there.
Any other feedback from the folks that are virtual?
I'll just offer that the boat ramp at the city of Gold Hill, the Sportsman's Park, the city of Gold Hill, as you showed on the previous slide, suggested some insurance limits that were going to be cost prohibitive for quite a few outfitters and out of line with the current Oregon State Marine Board requirements. And outfitters totally support on that section. The folks that I've talked to anyway have supported the city of Gold Hill in collecting revenue that's sufficient to maintain the facilities there. And it was a great compromise that was made, and especially Lily Morgan with the city of Gold Hill was communicative and easy to talk to and solicited feedback. And this was the first time that I've seen the new fee that they're going to do, and I'm going to be pleased to inform my fellow outfitters of that.
Thanks, Will. Yeah, I talked with Lily this morning just to verify what we currently have, and it was a very nice surprise to see how willing they are to work with folks. They just need to be able to support their parks and make them available to everybody.
And I think that they're, just like so many other cities and public places in Oregon, they're faced with the issue of recreational immunity and the advice of their city attorneys. And so it's great when they listen to outfitters and guides and find a solution.
Exactly. I think we need more cooperative effort on the part of guides. And, the Marine Board doesn't, of course, own any of the facilities. And sometimes we have relationships with the facilities, but having done some work, we might have matched funds to have improvements done. But we're not in the position to be able to say, you can't charge. That is their prerogative.
Well, on the lines of charging, I know when our agency reviews grant applications, that there is a score provided on whether the facility charges or doesn't charge voters, or what that threshold is. I don't know what the weighted score is, but I know that that is taken into consideration in the grant application scoring for facility grants.
And I think a lot of this is also in response to, you know, the frequency of outfitter guides using facilities and, you know, wear and tear on the facilities. If they see, you know, it's easy to charge the person you see the most often. Of course, the general public, you don't see day after day. So I don't want to say you're targeted, but you're visible. So it's something to be aware of.
So after this group discussion today, and I know we talked about it last time a little bit, is there any action items that the guide advisory committee would like Cyndi or I to do within our authority or within our wheelhouse on trying to provide some best management practices to guides or some success stories? Is there anything you'd like to see us do?
I mean, what I think most of the guides are going to want is for them not to charge us, and that's not going to happen. So I don't really know if there's much you can do, to be honest. I mean, we just have to eat it and do it, try and get along.
I think
and
we'd like some support, though. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be nice, but I mean, let's face it, the ports, they don't have to give support. They could just say, here, pay this or you don't launch. That's the problem.
And the ports typically have a commission, and they're independent government, and so it gets a little bit tricky. But I got a list that folks gave examples today: Brookings, Gold Beach, Winchester, Newport. Cyndi and I can commit to reaching out to those and maybe seeing what their criteria is on charging, or maybe what was the issues that drove them to that fee, to see if we can at least let them know.
Brian, can I ask you a question though?
Yeah, Bill,
sorry
go
to
ahead.
interrupt. This is pretty passionate here for me, representing a multitude of fishing guides. This reminds me though of the issue of parking. Remember when we had some entities that were being like, oh, we're just going to increase parking from $5 to $30. And you came in and said, here's the deal, that limits access to a certain number of people. And that means that if you receive money from us as Oregon State Marine Board, we want to support you and your facilities, but not if you're going to be egregiously and aggressive about your fee structures. I really want to know why that can't apply here. I mean, I know we have a legal thing going, and you made that really clear with me. I think Randy Henry explained that to me once, and we still found a way to kind of get it done and get the ball back towards, a dose of reality for some of these places. So why not now?
I appreciate that feedback, Bill. I will follow up with our boating facility manager, who has a more close relationship with these ports and facilities, and see what leverage we have in regards to like grant agreements or some of those things that you talked to Randy Henry about.
Yep, 100%. Brad, thanks.
All right, if there's no other comments or suggestions, we'll move on to new business.
I'll just add one thing if I can, which is that there's a significant issue with liability waiver reform, and I know OSMB can't actually advocate for that potentially. But part of that issue has to do with measuring the economic impact of outfitting and guiding in Oregon. And so if there is a way for OSMB to start, I guess, measuring those impacts in a certain way, I think it would, on your end, it might primarily be through beginning to track use of access points that you've contributed to. I think that that's something that down the road could potentially help with that sort of legislation.
Thanks, Will, for that feedback. I got it as a note here.
Yeah. See how we can do that.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Next up, this will be old for some of you. Brian's just going to go quick through the responsibilities of the GAC membership for our new members. So please bear with us.
Thanks, Cyndi. Let me switch gears here for just a second. So I think everybody can see here. I know we got at least 4 new members here, and it's been 2 years since I went through just kind of the role of the Guide Advisory Committee. So I promise I won't bore you as I go through this. Just super quick, six slides, so it should be pretty painless, but informative. So what is the Guide Advisory Committee? It provides guidance and advisory to agency staff, so that's the Marine Board, in engagement and problem solving for outfitter and guide in the charter industry in Oregon. It provides recommendations on various matters related to the outfitter and guide, the charter industry in Oregon, and the GAC will comply with open meeting, public records, and ethics laws. And so great examples tonight. You know, the folks on here provided some advice and recommendations on some of the matters we covered. So you're really getting a good flavor of the GAC tonight. There is a charter. It's available on our website. That Guide Advisory Committee charter, it talks about the authority for the committee, which is in accordance to statutes and Oregon administrative rules. That specific charter document talks about the purpose of the GAC, the authority, duties, and responsibilities. The composition of this committee, it has very specific composition standards. Frequency of meeting, the objective in committee meetings, meeting agenda, minutes of meeting reporting, committee performance evaluation, and the tenure of committee members. And that charter is available on the GAC website, which is under Outfitter Guides on the Marine Board main page. Plus Cyndi can send that out via PDF. How does Cyndi and I support the GAC? That's through meeting planning, preparation, facilitation, timely communication, coordination and communication between the Guide Advisory Committee members, development and distribution of meeting materials. We provide meeting agendas and materials in advance of the GAC meeting. And really the committee meetings, the objective is to ensure that the Marine Board staff are informed, advised, and engaged with outfitter and guides and the charter boat industry professionals. Cyndi and I work in an office when we don't get out on the water for work. And so it's really important for you to let us know what you're doing out there in the field professionals and the challenges that you're seeing in the industry. This is a really important piece. The Marine Board is a public body, which is defined in the statute. And the committee, the GAC, is a governing body, which is defined in statute. And so a governing body has authority to make recommendations to the public body or administration. But the committee does not have the authority to make rules or statutory changes to Marine Board administration. And then if you're not familiar with public meeting law, the GAC is subject to Oregon public meeting law. That's why it's being recorded, why this is live streamed, why we have the meeting materials posted ahead of time. We provide public notice in the meeting and meeting materials. The public, who there is some public on here, they're a viewer of the meeting, but that does not mean that they participate. And the committee members should email agency staff only. Please do not email each other. That gets in this piece of serial communication, which I'm not going to elaborate on tonight, but just know that there is laws against that. And then really just want to go over these ground rules, and I should have done this at the beginning. The GAC members, kind of some principles and guidelines, act in good faith, stay on topic, balance speaking time, address issues and questions, not people or organizations. Let's discuss topics together. Let's communicate on behalf of the group that you represent. Try and attend all meetings, and then come to the meetings prepared. I know Cyndi does a great job getting materials out ahead of time. We wouldn't send out materials if they didn't have meetings, so just kind of get a quick overview and a pulse of what the meeting is going to be about. And I would offer it up, any questions that you have regarding that little brief onboarding that I just went over. Awesome.
And I'll be sending these out to you as well as posting them on the website for you for your review. I know I emailed them to the new members when your kind of welcome packet. So
Yeah, I've got them.
great.
So,
Thank you.
I think the next piece is mine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it
Continue.
just kind of rolling into engagement. I know, so I've been on this specific group for almost 4 years. And we had a little bit of lag in there between, the COVID times, but it's really important to me that we get engagement from the outfitter guide, or excuse me, the guide advisor committee. I want to make sure that these meetings are not just Cyndi and I regurgitating information to you. It is engagement from this group, making recommendations to Cyndi and I, making us aware of things to where the agency can better serve you in the representation of the guides and the groups that you represent. So I just want to make it clear. I know as we're coming out of 2025, where we did a lot of legislative updates to this group, I want to get more back to the basics of this group, providing recommendations, making Cyndi and I aware of issues that we can help advocate for the Outfitter Guides of Oregon, and the work that you guys do to help serve individuals in providing outdoor recreation.
Yeah, this is your chance to, tell the folks that you interact with in your associations or in your daily guide activities, find out what they're needing and let us know, and so that we can take steps.
Any feedback or any recommendations or any thoughts on those last two new business items?
one thing I'd like to bring up, and Bill kind of commented on it, but another thought, these fees and stuff, it gets to be a death of 1,000 cuts. Everybody says, well, it's just $50 here and $50 there, but pretty soon when you're doing, at the end of the day, you write all those down and you got to do so many guided trips just to put your boat in the water and break even. There's eventually you'll kill a passenger pigeon and there is no more. There can be an end zone where it's just too much. And of course he's talking about not the ability to even launch, which is even worse. Drano was a good example of that. But the fees, it can get, even though it doesn't seem like a lot, it can be a death of 1,000 cuts. And when you look at all the different little things,
Right.
The boat launches, I just was down at Newport and a friend of mine was there. My God, just hundreds of dollars. And you've got to book a lot of trips to recover that, just food for thought.
Bill, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just one more thing. I mean, this will probably tie into this. Can I bring up another subject that ties into this maybe, or do you want me to wait?
Can you wait for good order? If that's possible.
Yes.
Roundtable,
Okay.
sorry,
Right.
roundtable.
Yep.
Jason, yes.
Yeah. So I read in the application there that talks about the registration fees for deckhands.
Yes.
And I was just curious, does that apply to documented boats as well, or is it just the 6-pack charter outfitters?
It does not apply to the 7+ passenger documented vessel, charter vessel, what we consider a charter vessel.
So if it's a tour boat, they don't have to license their deckhands, but the fishing guides do?
Correct, currently.
So you asked for suggestions. I would suggest that you just give guides an option to license up as a guide that is paid a fee to run with a deckhand and not have to worry about licensing each and every deckhand that comes along. I don't know if this is just about getting a little money or if you're worried about each other deckhand being capable, but I think it'd be a lot more streamlined if the guide had an option to pay an extra $100 on his license, then he can run with a deckhand if he chooses.
That's certainly an option. We've been more concentrated on making sure we have knowledge of that individual, that they are certified with first aid CPR, that they have a background that is past our threshold. So we're a little more specific than a generic crew member designation.
And just for the record, that fee was reduced because prior to this year, it would have been $150 minimum for a crew member if somebody was following the law and actually registering those folks that are aiding in fishing activities. If it was non-resident, it potentially could have been more than the 150. And now it's down to 50. So we reduced it by $100 at minimum.
Okay, thank you.
It's food for thought though, Jason. Thanks for the comment.
And it would, just to clarify, it would take legislative change.
Yeah. Which we know takes a while. All right, if there's no other comments, thinking on the ideas of we'd like to hear from you and your thoughts. We have just a comparison to share as far as credentialing outfitter guides within the states and within our state, and the differences in what we look for or what the requirements are through statute and rule for the different guides. And this is really just, again, we're asking you, according to rule, with input from Guide Advisory Committee, the Marine Board itself can make changes to, encourage high standards of ethical conduct, customer service, safety, and natural resource protection. So with those things in mind, we would like to know if you have any concerns, or this is an opportunity for change if we feel it's needed. I just quickly put together a comparison of what the requirements are for different types of guides within the state. So motorized fishing guide, non-motorized fishing, whitewater, hunting, or all others. The first four are identical: if first aid, CPR, insurance, surety bond, if it's required, and Secretary of State registry. Gets more specific in the safety requirements. The list gets longer when you involve a boat, and it gets really long when you have a motorized boat, including the operator's certification or license. So we've had comments in the past from the public and guides, individual guides as well, as regarding the low barrier our state has to guiding. And, if you wanted to be a scenic tour guide, all you'd have to do is produce first aid, CPR, and insurance and register. You don't even have to have a business name. You don't have to register if you don't have it. You don't take $100, you don't have to have a surety bond. So it is an extremely low barrier, and as long as you have a background, which we do. But should any of these be changed for any specific industry or service? Just kind of wanted your thoughts.
I do have a comment regarding the first aid and CPR requirements, and I'll speak on behalf of the whitewater rafting industry. The current statute suggests that it needs to be a Red Cross equivalent, I believe. And so the issue is that there's numerous guides in our industry who actually far exceed that, like with a whooper or a wilderness first aid, but it's not considered an equivalent of Red Cross. And so there's guides who have these, exceptionally high standards for their first aid, but it doesn't check the box for the Oregon State Marine Board. And so they end up taking a second course that is, subpar compared to, what they currently actually have just to check that box. And so it's a duplication of fees that they're paying. And it
Well,
would be, yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I want to apologize first for any misconception there that we would not consider it to be equivalent to American Red Cross, because we certainly do take them as far superior to American Red Cross's standard courses. So I sincerely apologize if people are taking another course to satisfy us when that's not. Yeah, Woofer, Knowles, those are all fantastic. I'd love to make that a requirement for everybody. That's all I
That's feedback that I've received from guides, is that they've had to take second courses. And so maybe I'm happy to communicate that to those folks, but maybe some additional communications needed.
Yes, I will follow up on that. Anybody else with any comments? We in the past have tried to produce or pass legislation that incorporated a higher surety bond limit for hunting guides. We look at it as, a surety bond is that mechanism that steps into place if the guide is not able, when a customer is due a refund or reimbursement. If the guide is unable to, the surety bond steps in to replace the funds that the client may have lost or is owed. We find that a $5,000 surety bond, quite honestly, does not get close to some of the hunting deposits or fees paid for, popular trips. Of course, that would take legislation to change that, but if it's something that anybody feels strongly about, or any of these, if anyone feels strongly about, we can work towards that. It takes some time, but that's what we're here for.
What would you say most deposits are? I know mine's 1,000. When people run my hunts, they put down 1,000 for some cover 5.
Yeah, and I'm not required to see what their deposit schedule or what their contract is. That's a whole nother discussion. But in the reimbursements that I've seen try to go through surety bonds, I've had over 5,000. When it gets to
a lot of the hunts are,
right,
they're getting up there.
Right, or when you have a party of 4 people that each have put down $1,500 for a pause, that quickly surpasses the 5,000.
Yeah.
So that's a discussion we'd have to find out more about.
I like the bonded part. I put it right on my stuff, bonded and licensed.
Yeah.
People know it.
Right, it is good advertising.
So to clarify, the feedback I heard is making it more clear that our first aid requirements acknowledge Knowles and wilderness first aid. Is there any additional thoughts or feedback on the credentialing and requirements that we require for all these different guide types? Or is there a guided activity that there's some type of certification that we're currently not requiring, maybe something related to rock climbing or backcountry alpine skiing or is there something that we're overlooking or something that folks in the industry you see that maybe is a gap?
Hi, this is Dana Burwell, and I had a different question. It regards the whitewater rafting, the class 3 helmets. And we've been offering them to guests, but not requiring them to be worn. Unlike the class 3 life jackets, they have to wear them for insurance.
Right.
What's the state regulation on that?
So the class 3 life jackets are required to be
Yes, we
worn
know
in
that.
class 3, not only for insurance, but for us too. And then the helmets, the regulation is you do have to offer them, make them
Yeah.
available. Yeah. So whether it's in advance with their, with their reservation documentation, or if it's there at the side of the river, either way works, but they do have to know that they're being offered the availability of one.
And our guides usually make their clients on class 4, 3 and 4 water use a helmet, but other than that, we don't.
Well, that's smart. Thank you. Yeah.
The second thing is, can you send us an email with this screenshot here? And
Yes,
then would it be possible to get a summary of the notes of the meeting too, so I can share with my other guides?
absolutely. Yes, I was going to tell you that we will definitely circle back around to this if people would like to think it over and, in your daily guiding lives, see something that might pop up, please bring it forward. I will be emailing you all the slides that we have here today. And then as soon as they're drafted, I will be sending out you the draft minutes for the meeting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are sound producing devices still required on PFDs of customers for whitewater rafting trips?
It's not required on the life jacket, it's required in the boat.
Okay.
It's smart to have it on the life jacket, yes. Any other comments? Like I said, please reach out to us if something pops up. I think this is what we're here for, really, to make sure that we're relevant and that what we require is what should be out there. So appreciate your thoughts. Anything else on that, Brian? Okay. All right. Next item is remote or in-person meetings across the state. We're lucky to have David here with us today. We welcome anybody else. But we do realize that you're located far and wide. Do you think it's important that we go out and meet elsewhere? Would you join us? Where are some places you think we should be?
Maybe I'll interject on this one. This is Bill. I really like the northwest coast here. Astoria, Tillamook's pretty good. That Portland thing is a little bit easier for a lot of folks, but that's just my perception. There's a couple of us that are in this area.
Correct. Yes. And then if you have a suggestion of any place that could offer us both meeting space and technology to make it remote as well. So
yeah, we have a couple of those here. Cool.
Is there any other areas in the state or GAC members that, say, if Cyndi and I traveled to Roseburg or Medford or Hood River or Prineville or any of those other locations from folks that are on the GAC or maybe Eugene, would that be something that folks would attend in person if they were able to versus a virtual option?
I know personally there's nowhere in the state I won't go unless I can. If I was busy working, I'm working.
Appreciate that. Yeah.
For me, it kind of depends on the time of year, but I'm happy to meet in person. I think that the primary factor for meeting in person would be whether or not you're trying to get additional attendance from outfitters and guides outside of this group. But if you were meeting in Southern Oregon, I'd meet in person.
Thanks, Will. I know I appreciated being at your Wild Rogue Association meeting, the Outfitters Association. And like I told Brian, I think I learned more from just being there from everybody else in the room than anybody learned from me. So it's much more dynamic in person.
Yeah, and thank you for making the trek down for that.
All right. Well, email us if you think of any place. I'd appreciate it. We'll work on that for a future meeting. Next item is roundtable. Bill, you had something you wanted to add to this?
Yeah, this is going to be sensitive. You're not going to like it. Brian probably won't either. It's been pretty big for you guys. It's going to be big for Clint on the enforcement side. It's going to be big for everybody. But the Siletz River access and limits and basically the whole thing, I'd like some sort of, I guess the bigger picture is, I know a lot of these people, we all try to talk and be able to work with them together. We got a big issue it's brewing and it's starting to come to fruition. I wanted to know if the GAC specifically can maybe create a little bit of a stance that's going to be unified, that will support the overall best interest of that river and not just let this willy-nilly kind of stuff just take place. I'm bombarded by what's going on and I don't quite know what to do with it because it's messy. I wanted to see what we could do here to fix it, if it's fixable. I know that we saw a lot of processes to go through. You guys have your absolute hands full with this, and I know it. So,
Yeah. So, yeah, Bill, just so everybody on the group here kind of, obviously I know what you're talking about. Cindy knows what you're talking about. Maybe a few other folks too, but currently there's a complex rulemaking process taking place, and it's been going on for I don't know, about a year. Well, the agency received a petition and it had a rule advisory committee, which on that specific rule advisory committee there was 2 licensed guides plus recreational fishermen to talk about not only the values perception, but to talk about some of the user conflict that takes place on the Siletz River. And more specifically, we're talking about the Siletz River above Jack Morgan Park. And so it's a very public rulemaking process. There's every single rural advisory committee meeting is recorded. It's on the Marine Board YouTube channel. So all those rural advisory committee meetings go back and be watched if people want to get informed. If you watch the last board meeting, you can see what the actual Marine Board directed staff to do. I know that it's a very public process. It is a little bit unique in that the agency does government to government consultation, which is state law. So we do consultation as well with the Siletz tribe. And so in regards to what the GAC role would be, I guess I would say there was registered guides that were on that rule advisory committee, which that there's representation there. But are you saying you have feedback from other guides, or what? I guess I'm trying to better understand what you're looking at.
Well, we definitely do, and none of it is like stuff that's appropriate to say appropriately here, but to be able to limit access for one user group because they want to take over and have their way, and then another user group to have their way. We got to find, and I know it's very public. That's the one thing, but it's such hot button sensitive material that if one thing goes wrong, it's going to create a big old mess. And there's this whole fairness and fishing guides, we're not the end of the world. We don't deserve this type of, I guess I'd say, label that's been given to us. It's very difficult to kind of take this type of stuff sitting down. And I'm not saying like the GAC is going to come out and like have all of our backs and we're going to go out and get all Western. That's not what I'm saying. But if this is going to take place, we have to come together and make this work. And that needs to be like a unified stance, I hope, that can support the overall use of that river.
And Bill, just to clarify, I know you said you used the word access earlier, restrict access. Our agency doesn't have the authority to restrict access. What we have the authority to do is make boat operation rules. And so, for example, a boat operation rule could be like a slow and awake. It could be, you know,
no boat, no motors, no anchors. If they're going to want that, it's going to be this whole cascading thing of things.
Yeah, so we stay in our lane of making boating regulations. In regards to restricting access, that's not within our authority. Just to clarify. So I just want to make that clear. In regards to, you know, the current rulemaking process, I would encourage the GAC to just stay in tune to, if you don't get our agency, you know, interested parties emails, Cyndi and I can make that happen. So you're getting those so you can be involved. There's typically public testimony that can be provided, whether you want to do that as a member of the public, you want to do that on behalf of your guiding business, that type of thing. I would recommend those channels for that type of thing.
Hey, Bill.
Okay.
I don't want to waste a bunch of people's time. I just got back from hunting, so my head hasn't been in the game. Can you give a quick overview of what's going on? So I understand.
Well, a lot of the tribal petition has come forward where the tribes want to do a certain thing. They want to limit, you know, no fishing on a certain section of above Jack Morgan. They want, and then it comes down to no motors is an option.
So Bill, I'm going to stop you.
Brian, do you have that list of options? He probably needs to be updated. Yeah.
So Bill, I'll stop you. There's nothing that would limit fishing. You got to realize Marine Board's authorities.
No, that's not what I meant. The tribes are going to come over and they want a certain thing.
And this is the Confederated Tribes or the Siletz Tribe?
It'll be the Confederated Tribes in all reality, and that's going to come down to them operating it'll be the Siletz Tribe. Sorry, they run Chinook winds and all this other stuff.
Right.
So Bill, just to clarify,
there's a bunch of different options that were given. And Brian, I don't know if you have that list, but I could submit that. Scott Ammerman and I, we have a lot of time invested in this, and it's passionate. And I don't even fish there, but it's a really big deal.
And that's in the upper river, or will it go down through Tidewater?
So just to clarify, the petition was Jack Morgan upstream that the agency received last year. The petition was to restrict motor use above Jack Morgan. Currently it has a no jet pumps rule, which has been in place, don't quote me on this, but I believe since 1988. The agency has received petitions multiple times in the past on this section of river and the talking point around user conflict. So I'm not going to go beyond that because it's a very public process through the Rural Advisory Committee, through the agency board meetings. If you want to get involved, those are the means of getting involved in regards to the agency board meetings going forward for that process.
Thanks for the clarification, just so I kind of know.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm just really concerned, Cyndi. That's all.
We understand, Bill.
That's always what I've done.
And I know I've mentioned to you that, you know, the rulemaking committees are there for public comment, to receive public comment regarding it. Honestly, I don't think we could represent the guides as a whole because there's certainly a lot of different.
Either.
So
that would be quite the conflict. I get it. I know.
So I appreciate you bringing that up, but we will be staying tuned.
Any other roundtable business?
Thanks for letting me talk, guys.
Absolutely, Bill.
You're welcome. Does anybody have any suggestions for our next meeting date? This is February. I like August or September, but I know fishing is busy, hunting is ramping up.
September's always gonna be busy.
Do you want, is June a possibility with,
I'm wide open in June. August, September's my busiest month.
June is really great for a lot of us. Yeah.
Will, are you ramping up at that point?
June's our busiest month, but I'll make time.
Thanks.
So Cindy and I'll work together to get a meeting scheduled in June. I know that the charter only talks about biannual. I would like to get us on a rhythm of at least 3 meetings a year. Just because I think there's a lot of things going on in the world of guides and the industry. And so we'll plan for June, get another meeting. And if you have specific agenda items for new business, please send those to Cindy and I. I have a few action items here that Cindy and I'll work on in the meantime. But don't hesitate to ever send us an email or communication, whether it's to Cindy or both of us. We're here to help you. And really appreciate everybody engaging on this guide advisory committee.
I'll send out a doodle poll. We'll get it on the calendar sooner rather than later. And does this time frame seem to work? I hate to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. If nobody has anything else to add, I will say have a great evening.
Thanks for doing this, Brian and Cindy and Clint.
Have a good night. Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thanks for the meeting.